Before we begin this week's episode of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, I want to tell you of a great guide that I made just for you. It's the 12 financial mistakes that keep physicians from building wealth. After talking to hundreds of physicians, I've heard many mistakes, and these are the ones that I thought were most important to share so that you can potentially avoid making these mistakes, or if you've already made them, learn a bit about how you might be able to recover. You can grab the guide at my website, www.growyourwealthymindset.com/12 financial mistakes. Now on to this week's episode. Hello, welcome to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, where it is all about helping amazing physicians just like you create a wealthy life free from burnout and with the financial security to practice medicine on your own terms. I'm your host, Dr. Elisa Zhang. Welcome back to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. Today, I want to dive into a topic that's deeply relevant not only to our financial and professional lives, but also to our emotional well-being, and that's coping with stress and trauma. This is the 6th happiness-boosting practice from Sonja Lyubomirsky's book, The How of Happiness. No life is without stress, and that's certainly true for the life of a physician. We're constantly navigating emotionally intense situations, high expectations, and the weight of caring for others. Statistically speaking, about half of U.S. adults will experience at least one severe traumatic event in their lifetime. That's a staggering number, and it reminds us that trauma is not rare. It's part of the human condition. When we go through these painful experiences, our ability to cope is what helps us move forward. Coping, at its core, is what we do to ease the hurt, stress, or suffering caused by a negative event. And broadly speaking, there are two main types of coping: problem-focused and emotional-focused. Problem-focused coping is exactly what it sounds like. It's when we take action to resolve the issue. Maybe we come up with a plan, seek advice, or actively try to make the problem go away. For example, if you're dealing with a stressful workload, problem-focused coping may involve delegating tasks, setting clear boundaries, or finding more efficient systems. Emotion-based coping, on the other hand, is what we turn to when the situation can't be fixed, at least not right away. This kind of coping comes into play when we lose a loved one or face a reality that simply has to be endured. It may involve seeking support from close family or friends, engaging in physical activity to manage emotional intensity, or turning to spiritual or religious practices. Sometimes it's about finding ways to accept the situation, to learn from it, and to allow ourselves to grieve and process. Neither approach is better than the other. They're just different tools in the coping toolbox. And often, especially when we're dealing with chronic or ongoing problems, we need both. It's about learning when to act and when to reflect, when to solve and when to simply feel. One powerful tool for emotion-focused coping, and one that I've personally found to be helpful, is expressive writing. An exercise suggested by Dr. Lyubomirsky is to set aside 15 to 30 minutes a day for 3 to 5 consecutive days and write about one of your most painful or distressing experiences. Describe the event in detail and explore your reactions and emotions honestly. It's not about writing something polished or correct. It's about getting your thoughts and feelings out of your head and onto paper. I've kept a journal since I was in middle school. When something's really bothering me, I often find myself writing about it. I don't generally write for several days in a row, but even one session helps me process what's going on in a way that ruminating never does. There's something about organizing your thoughts in a narrative that can really bring clarity and peace. And that leads to another approach, one that overlaps with expressive writing, but takes it a step further. It's about finding benefit in your pain. This is not the toxic positivity kind of way, but in a thoughtful, gradual reflection of how this trauma may have shaped you. There's generally a 3-step process here. First, acknowledge the pain. Don't brush past it or minimize it. Own it. Let yourself feel it fully. Then, look at how you responded. What did you do during that time that you're proud of? Did you show strength or compassion in some way? Finally, reflect on how you've grown. How's your perspective on life shifted? Have you become more empathetic, more grateful, or more open-minded? Sometimes the trauma strengthens your relationships. Maybe it brought someone closer to you. Maybe it deepened your connection in a way that wouldn't have happened otherwise. These reflections don't take away the pain, but they help to integrate it into a meaningful part of your story. Another coping strategy, this one is a bit more cognitive, is called thought disruption. It's especially helpful when you find yourself spiraling into overly negative or pessimistic thoughts. We all have automatic thoughts that come up when something goes wrong. And sometimes those thoughts are distorted or biased in ways that don't serve us. The How of Happiness book describes this technique as something they call ABCDE. A is for the adversity you're facing. B is the belief that pops into your mind about the adversity. C is for consequences, how the belief makes you feel or act. D is for disruption. This is where you challenge the belief. E is for energize, for the result of changing your thoughts to something more realistic or hopeful. Let's take an example. A, the adversity you're facing, may be that your best friend hasn't called you in 4 months. B, the belief that pops into your head about this adversity is you're thinking, she doesn't want to be my friend anymore. C are the consequences that this belief makes you feel or act. And here, maybe that belief that she doesn't want to be my friend anymore makes you feel lonely and rejected. D is disruption. This is where you challenge it. Maybe she's busy. Maybe she's struggling herself. Maybe she's waiting for you to reach out. E, for energize, is hopefully then you feel a little bit more hopeful and feel a little less weighted down. The hardest part, of course, is the disruption. You have to be like a detective. Look for evidence that your negative thought isn't the full picture. Ask yourself, what evidence do I have for this belief? Are there other possible explanations? Even if it's true, what's the worst that could happen? And how likely is it? What's the best that could happen? And what is the most realistic outcome? Most importantly, is this belief useful to me? What do I get out of holding on to it? When you challenge these thoughts, you're not ignoring reality. You're just choosing not to let your most negative assumptions run the show. You're taking back control of your narrative. And in fact, this is what I really do when I do a lot of coaching. I got certified through the Life Coach School, where we really learn to use what Brooke Castillo has framed the model, CTFAR. The C stands for circumstances. That is the neutral circumstance, that's a fact, that everyone would agree on. T is your thought about that circumstance. Your thought creates your feelings. So when you have that thought, then you have a feeling that comes from that thought. We act based on our feelings, and then our actions or inactions give us results. And then we look at our results and we ask ourselves, do we like those results? We realize that we can actually change our thoughts. Our thoughts are optional. The circumstance is unchangeable, but we can have different thoughts about that circumstance. And so that's the disruptive part that goes into this ABCDE method. By really taking control of our brain and managing our brain, choosing thoughts we want to believe, and working on thoughts we want to believe, we can change our own narrative. We can change how we feel and what action we take with a given circumstance. And this isn't meant to be gaslighting. This isn't meant to say that the thoughts you have are wrong, but you want to ask yourself, does this thought serve me? Is this a thought I want to think? What would I rather believe? Another version of this exercise is what Byron Katie calls the work, which uses 4 questions to challenge stressful thoughts and promote self-awareness. The first question is it true? Which encourages a direct assessment of the thought's validity. The second question, can you absolutely know it's true? This takes the questioning deeper, challenging you to examine the certainty behind the belief. The next question, how do you react when you believe that thought? Explores the emotional and physical consequences of believing that thought. The last question, who would you be without the thought? Invites reflection on how life may be different without this thought. After answering the questions, try to come up with a turnaround, a sentence expressing the opposite thought. For example, she doesn't understand me could become, I don't understand her, or I don't understand myself. Doing the work can be really powerful, but it does take some practice. And Byron Katie has many excellent books. And if this rings true to you, I encourage you to check out some of her books. Sometimes we get stuck in our own thoughts, and we accept our thoughts as facts. This is when working with a coach really can be so helpful. As a coach, I act as an objective and neutral observer to help clients recognize their thoughts and examine their thoughts. I may offer a new perspective for the same situation or circumstance. By recognizing our thoughts and our ability to pick and choose the thoughts we want to reinforce, we can actually take back our power. Our brain actually starts looking for evidence based on whatever we're thinking. So the more we think a certain thought, the more our brain will constantly look for evidence to support that thought, the more we can believe in that thought, and the more we can take action from that thought. I found coaching very useful for myself, though sometimes it can be triggering to have someone tell you that your thought really is just a thought you're choosing to have. So I get it. But once you allow yourself to open up to the idea that you really can change how you're thinking about something, it really gives you the freedom to choose your own destiny. So whether it's journaling, reflecting on personal growth, or challenging negative beliefs, coping isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. It's all about knowing yourself, knowing what you need in the moment, and giving yourself permission to heal in your own way. Thanks for spending this time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, or you think someone else may like to hear it, please share the episode. If you have something where you think you may like to try coaching in order to get over whatever negative thoughts you're having about a situation, I'm open to working with you on whatever you want to work on. You can always schedule a Zoom call with me at my website, www.growyourwealthymindset.com. And please take care of yourself, not just as a physician, but as a whole person. You deserve it. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could share it with your friends and colleagues. And now for the disclaimer. I am not a certified financial planner, accountant, or attorney, and nothing I say should be construed as professional investment, tax, or legal advice. This show is primarily for your education and entertainment. I am a physician, but I'm probably not your physician. So if you need any medical advice, please contact your own physician. Thank you. Don't forget to pick up your guide, 12 Financial Mistakes That Keep Physicians from Building Wealth. You can grab that guide at my website, www.growyourwealthymindset.com/12 financial mistakes. You'll also find that link in the show notes.